Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. The blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media, signing black and shining again. Asking you to hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. All right, look. This being part 2 of why I do it. You understand from the last one that naturally, if my reasons are as I said, then I'm required to be fair. And since I can't be perfect, then fair and just is the best I can be. What this means is that when you have a grudge, either against an idea or against other content creators or commentators, you will find that I will be for certain ideas and against other ideas, but you will see that I am hesitant to jump into others' grudges and beefs and just pick a side. When I do, and I'm not adverse to doing it when I have the knowledge, but when I do, it will be when I've got enough knowledge to make a decision as to who was right and who was wrong. But before you ask me or expect me to jump in, either for you or against you, for your opponent or against your opponent, you must keep in mind something. When people say the right things, I question two things. One, if what they say and espouse is correct, can it be justified and backed up? Second, morally speaking, but secondly, is it for the right reasons? Now, what you may say, well, if they said the right things, what do the reasons matter? Well, here's why. The Surgeon General gave health advice to Black Americans. The problem is that the Surgeon General said the right things for the wrong reasons. It's technically correct, but it's the wrong reasons. Number one, Black folks don't always have control over whether they can contract this virus of COVID-19. They may have jobs where they have to go and work and they don't have a choice and they have to catch it. Even poor whites may go through this. But also, it's something that he said, and I'm pretty sure it was more so to please the Trump supporting crowd. Trump and the crowd that supports him. Not so much just for the benefit of Black folks. It's just like when some people tell young Black boys to pull their pants up. You tell Black boys to pull their pants up for their own benefit or for the community's benefit. You do not do it in order to make white folks happy. So there's a right way to say even the right things when you're talking to an oppressed group of people. You see Bedouins engage in this a lot. When I check them on calling Black people slaves, yes, I do check them on it. They try to gloss it over and say, well, we don't mean any harm, and we're all slaves of God, and Bilal was Black, and we're not the enemies. And I tell them, yeah, okay. The day that it's okay for us to call you terrorists because of your complexion and your hair is straight is the day that it's okay to call us slaves because we're Black. Yeah, I know we are all slaves of God. Yes, Bilal was Black. But see, you're not saying this for the right reason. You're saying it because you don't want me to retaliate by calling you what you deserve, a camel raping terrorist. I know you don't rape camels, and I know you're not a terrorist. I know you don't wear a bomb belt. But you know that we're not slaves, neither naturally nor legally are we slaves. So tit for tat. You don't want the tat for your tit, so you're saying these things that are factually correct for the wrong reason. And I don't accept their excuse, and I retaliate. Some of them have told me this is dangerous. Some people will fight you for it. And I say to them that I'm going to fight them for using the word slave. They might kill you. Well, then we'll kill each other because they called my people slaves. I mean, when I call someone a terrorist, I'm only calling that person a terrorist. When someone calls my race slaves, they're saying that Allah is a racist and created people unequally, which is blasphemy in our religion. Did y'all know that? See, a lot of you didn't understand this, but yes, by extension, racism can be blasphemy. If a Muslim is racist and admits this is a human weakness he has, and he can at least admit that he should not be, then he's a flawed Muslim. But if he tries to justify the racism, and he has a belief that a race was created superior or inferior to another, he has then blasphemed against the law. Did you know that? He can have a cultural problem, let's say, with a particular group of people. He can have an issue with Bengalis because of a culture, a custom, but he can't have an issue with them because of their DNA or anything thereof, and then try to justify it. Now, if they're too dark for him, he can say, yeah, I just don't like that color. That's my problem. Okay, you're a lowlife, you're a piece of crap, but you're not a blasphemer. You're not a heretic. Oh, well, our color's superior to theirs. Oh, really? Okay, see, now you're saying Allah is a racist. And I seek refuge from ever thinking that. So when you on YouTube, just because you and I may be of the same race, you say something that's right, I have to also look for the reason you say it. If I don't find evidence against you, I'm not going to assume it, but that goes for the other person that you may not like. I don't know the background stories and a lot of your grudges, and therefore I'm not qualified to take sides. Start blaming someone else. I was told that somebody that I've listened to and learned from and who's been very civil towards me called someone else the B word. I didn't hear it. I'm not saying he did or did not. I wouldn't do it. So I'm not going to try to endorse him calling her the B word. What I am going to say is that I wouldn't do that. But I'm not qualified to jump in this and take sides per se for one reason. I've actually heard some, well, not heard, but I've actually read some people in the comments section saying things about another demographic within our race. And these are hateful comments, and they're not deleted and they're not checked. Now, I'm not holding content creators responsible for what commentators say either. However, I do understand that what you allow on there, it can be used for you or against you. I've had someone say something like death to light-skinned women. Well, I don't really, as much as I am against discrimination based on shade at all, because again, I'm a Muslim and I'm required to be fair as much as I can, much as I'm against that. The fact that lighter skinned people internationally have oppressed darker skinned people, this is a fact, and this is a historical pattern. And an international pattern, does not mean that I'm going to stand by while this man says death to a demographic, and this, or woman for that. I don't know what I don't know the gender of the commentator, but I'm not going to let that fly. I'm sure the commentator was in the United States. So yes, I removed that. To be fair, it's not okay to come on my page and say death to, and then pick a demographic, a genetic demographic at that. And then, call for death to them. Even if you're not threatening to kill them yourself, I'm going to draw the line there and be safe and be fair. You can come on and express sympathy with me because of the colorism or reverse colorism or reaction to colorism I faced as a kid. And you say these dark skinned MFs, and I'm like, no, see, these MFs were not that because of their shade. They were the way they were because of who they are. You can get on here and you can call them oppressors, bullies, cowards, punk bees, and everything else. But then again, I didn't lose the fights anyway, fortunately. I don't even think, it's funny because I don't even think that they even think about these conflicts anymore. I'm sure they don't actually. But you start talking about death to, death to dark-skinned bees. No, that's not going to happen. And if my daughters were not light-skinned, I still would not let this sort of thing fly. Because if my reasons are as I stated, I'm not allowed to get on there and start blaming any demographic of women for something they're not doing. I can't even get up and say that the majority of black people are divisive towards other black people, not as adults. As kids, I don't really know which environment to use as an example. But I can sit up and say that most black adults are really not divisive based on class or shade or regionalism for that matter. Most black adults are not interested in dividing up the race based on these things, except for generally character and polish, because there are people that are just outright bad for whatever community they're in. So I'm going, when you see that I'm not jumping on a side for or against particular people involved in grudges and beefs, it is because I want to be fair, and it takes time to get background knowledge of these beefs. I did not speak out in support of Sansa Ray or against Sansa Ray. I haven't listened much to her. I knew she existed, but I haven't listened much to her. Plus, I've also heard that this has been faked. So I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if she's dead or alive. So I don't get on her, nor do I go and support her. I'm not really doing either one. I'm not mourning and I'm not celebrating. I don't even know that she's dead. It's the lack of information. It's not me being a non-committal coward. It's the lack of information. So I'm simply avoiding making a statement when I perceive a high probability of having to retract it later. I will correct things when I really make an honest mistake, and then later I find out it was an honest mistake, and I will gladly retract them. But when I can perceive the chance that I will have to retract it later, I'd rather avoid making the statement in the first place, because that's a smart thing to do. So I wanted you all to understand that if my reasons are as I've said before, when I don't make certain statements, it will be because of the lack of background knowledge, questions that are not answered. And when I do go in on someone and I do take decisive stances against content creators or commentators, it's going to be because of background knowledge that I have, evidence that does support a conclusion I'm standing on. And I'm ready to stand on that conclusion based on the evidence, and I'm ready to change the conclusion if new evidence surfaces that that's not the case. So when it seems like if you perceive me being wishy-washy or non-committal, it is only based on that. That's it. I'm trying to follow the evidence. Yes, I do take issue with one particular channel. They will discuss colorism to their credit, and they should, and I've learned information. But when I say something about the white Western uncivilization being a problem, I'm told to can it because of the possible white relatives of some of the people that go on that channel. I don't fivaguck about them. If they were good parents, I'm glad they were. And I'm happy for those who were raised by them. But I don't fivaguck about the loyalty that the kids may have to that parent's civilization from which they come. Shuck that fit. And no, I didn't cuss. Their civilization is still not really a civilization. It is an uncivilization of barbarism, colonialism, slavery, and exploitation. Even the white supremacy, for which I blame them, they didn't get themselves. They got it from someone else, but they took it to a whole different level. So if your mother or your father's white, I still got nasty things to say about the white Western uncivilization. It is barbaric. It is one of the worst things to happen to the rest of mankind. It doesn't mean that I hate your parents. I don't know them. I don't love them either. But I expect that they're probably going to want to defend their uncivilization, and that's when we become opponents, because I know that they know how bad, if they weren't that way, I know they know how bad their ancestors were. Everyone knows. Don't defend them. Your ancestors were pieces of crap. The ones who were not pieces of crap, you can defend. And I would join you in that. Because again, my motive is to be fair. We know that the majority of them had certain attitudes about everybody that wasn't them. And if they didn't share these nasty attitudes, they had to pretend they did. In the Jim Crow South, many people who were not biased against you had to pretend to be, to get along with their neighbors. Lack of bias against black people was unfashionable in the Jim Crow South. After Jim Crow was illegal, bias against black people was seen as unfashionable, and many of them felt they had to hide it. However, we now know that when they don't know someone black is in the room, or when there is no one black in the room, many of them are going to express bias, and the expectation is that they're all on board. I'm not required to say nice things about them because of their blood kinship to somebody in the audience. It's the same thing with black folk. We got bad habits. I'm not going to disparage us for these bad habits in order to make white folks happy. But if I'm going to address these issues in order to encourage us to leave these habits and discourage the habits themselves, well then, yeah, I gotta be fair. This is where we ucked up. And our blackness is not a reason for me to let these things go when they're actually holding us back in some way, form, or fashion. So what I say, what I don't say, the sides I take and the sides I don't take are simply based on my intention to be fair. I'm not saying I'm always right. I'm saying that I'm careful. That's all. So if ever you're looking for me to jump on someone else, understand that if I know about them being wrong and I'm sure of it, you won't even have to ask me. And if I know about them being right and I'm sure of it, they wouldn't have to ask me to be in their corner. If I know about you being wrong, they don't have to ask me to jump on you. But I'm not going to assume, actually, as a matter of fact, considering the history of our people and how we handle grudges, my default position is that when two people are going at it, both of them are wrong for something. I've learned from experience that if I simply wait long enough, they'll show it. It could even be as simple as they don't read very well. Or as simple as they read the comments and then they start with the straw man stuff, deconstructing a point that was not made or implied. I've seen that happen quite a few times. I mean, that's what black folks do, really. I'm not going to call any, I'm not going to say anything to flatter us. I'll never forget an argument darn near turned into a fight between two close friends. Because one of them said to the other, that heroic stunt you tried to pull yesterday, man, that was dumb. And man, let's not do stuff like that. That was actually kind of stupid on your part. Try to be the hero that day. Mess around and then not be able to be there for your mom. And the other guy that had tried to be the hero didn't hear him clearly. Don't say nothing about my mama. I'm not really talking bad about her. I said, I want you to be there for her. But then, the guy tried to be hero, like he didn't let him finish. I said, don't say nothing about my mama, bro. I didn't. Yes, you did. No, you didn't hear what I said. From not hearing, two close friends were about to get into a dumb nigga argument. They didn't have a nigga moment. They had a nigga half hour. They had to be separated. Then when I tried to tell them later, but they had reconciled. One of them was like, we shouldn't talk about that, Aki. Okay, fine. But understand that he didn't say what you thought he said. We shouldn't talk about that, Aki. Dumb nigga, I'm trying to tell you that there was no reason for y'all to argue in the first place. He kept cutting me off. Finally, I was just like, I wish he had beaten you into the hospital. Dumb nigga. And I don't make any apologies for calling him that. He later on tried to break up a married couple. And the community had to run him out for that. He and I almost got into another fight later. I expected to see him in the city that he's from because that's the city I had to go to meet my wife's family before she and I got married. And I actually expected to see his trifling behind in that city. And we were probably going to slug it out. I'll just tell you straight away. I've learned that the ways that black folks argue are terrible. I've already made mention of this before. And that's part of why it is that if I had selfish reasons for doing what I do and saying what I say, I just wouldn't say them. I mean, for years I didn't. The last thing I'm going to explain to you is why it is that I've got the name Black all the time. I mean, why I started off with the name Blackheart for my channel. I picked that name at first in order to offend the sensibilities of the Arabs, specifically the Bedouin, not even just the Arabs, but the Bedouin Arabs, but actually the Arabs in general. I don't respect the way that they view color and race. And so consequently, they would say certain things and I would call them on it, not mostly when they would call us slaves, but then other things too. And so they would say, well, we don't really mean that they're owned by other people. That's just the term we use for their color. And I'd say, but why do you equate the color with a lower status? I would try to ask that. It's hard to ask that question in Arabic. And especially back then when I was new and they would interrupt and all this stuff. And I would tell them, why don't y'all cut that mess out? Matter of fact, you know what? If you're not going to stop, fine. I'm going to tell black Gulf people, I'm going to tell the black Arabs what you all say, and we're just going to call y'all terrorists, maybe even camel rapist. Oh, if you can't do that, well, I mean, come on. I know you're not really terrorists, and I know you don't really rape camels. But I mean, since you're going to use negative stereotypes, let's be even about it. Let's be fair. If you're not capable of understanding why what I'm saying is fair, you're a racist. And they would start to say, well, you know, it's not the original meaning. We don't mean the dictionary meaning. And so then I figured, okay, well, Blackheart. Now, that's not something that Arabs look highly upon. For religious reasons, I get it. You don't say your heart is black normally. But in my case, it has a different meaning. It means that my heart is with black folks against anybody that's going to oppress them. Doesn't mean I always think black folks are right. I just think we're always more right than other people that forget that we're equal to them. The minute somebody forgets we're equal, they become inferior. My heart is going to be with black folks in any conflict we have with any other group of people because we never start stuff with other people. We only start it with each other. Therein lies our fault, but that's not their business. That's our business. So I chose the name Blackheart just to be offensive to their sensibilities and the sensibilities of anybody that might agree with their backwards retarded behinds. There's a reason that Allah talked about them in Surah Toba, verse 97. Now, verse 99 actually compliments the ones of the Bedouins that are good as gold. It's sort of like a sympathy. But the first two verses out of those three, verses 97 and 98, describe them as being ignorant. The matter of fact, the most likely to be ignorant. Describe them as being actually disbelieving hypocrites and severe in those things. That they are severe in disbelief and hypocrisy and the least likely to know the limits of what Allah has revealed to his messenger. And they act as though paying the zakah is a fine and a punishment. That's how they're described in those first two verses. Then in verse 99, Allah describes that some of them you are going to find to be very upright. That's why I chose this. I'm here to offend those who deserve to be offended when I know that this is the case. But again, I want the background knowledge. I'm not sitting up here just taking people's word for anything. That's not the fair thing to do. You see, I don't forgive you if you make the most negative and pessimistic assumption about me and my motives or anybody else for that matter, especially when they tell you something that requires self-discipline. Like when I tell you that Islam is the solution. I've heard everything to try to discredit that. Well, you're just saying that because you look like them. What do you mean I look like them? Muslims have every kind of phenotype. You mean I look like the Senegalese, or do you mean I look like the Bosnians? I don't actually resemble either one. I'm related to one of those two, but I don't resemble either one. Do you mean that I look like the stereotypical Middle Eastern Arab Muslim? Some of them think so, some of them don't. So what do you mean I look like them? And if I do, what bearing does that have if I'm not mentioning that, if I'm not even thinking about it? I say that Islam is a solution. Well, you just say that because you don't want to go and approach these women and you scared to drink. Well, I've already done those things. And I've done them enough to know that being scared to approach women is actually very intelligent in this day and age. And not wanting to drink is actually a very intelligent thing too. Especially in the age of false accusations. She'll drink herself into a stupor. Bust a nut all on your genitalia, retroactively withdraw consent, blame you, and put you under the jail. Because her friends made fun of her for sleeping with you because of what you're not and what you don't have and what you don't do. I was drunk. Oh, well, then you need to charge him with rape. That this dumb stuff. So, I'll sit up and say these things and people come with all these negative and pessimistic assumptions about why I'm saying it. Well, you got self-hatred issues and, you just, you worship the pale Arab instead of the white man. You got a complex in your mind. I got a complex about following evidence and not taking punishments that I'm not ready to take, especially for not following evidence. There's my complex right there. And I'm going to start making negative assumptions when some of you start trying to tell me things that I've already explained, or you start making the most pessimistic negative assumptions, or you try to diagnose my mental health, and you're not licensed to do that, and no one's licensed to do it through a keyboard. You start doing that, I'm just going to start doing the same thing to you. Fair is fair. You don't have to agree per se, but if you're going to sit up and try to make the worst pessimistic assumptions about me, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the same thing to you. Say something again, and I'm going to say, no, you know what it is? You don't want to give up fornication, drinking, pork. You don't want to wake up early in the morning, even to pray. You don't want to pray at all anytime during the day. You don't want to follow rules. You don't want to exercise self-discipline. That's all it is. I'm going to start saying things like this when people start coming along and addressing something that they know that I've already addressed, or raising something I've already addressed. Now, if you don't know that I've already addressed it, that's different. I'd simply say, no, actually. Well, here's a link. No, the Arabs didn't have this slave trade that ruined Africa like they say. I'll send the links, things like that. Actually, no, Ma'at is... the Ma'at system actually did not even make the same moral claims that you find in Islam. They themselves did not claim a certain level of morality. Here's the link, stuff like that. But you come in and you know that I've already addressed something and you just want to, I don't know, you want to show off and talk down. I'm going to do the same thing. Because you will have done it right in front of me. There won't be a question at that point. Because again, I'm supposed to be fair. And being fair does not mean that I've got to be a pushover. And it doesn't mean I've got to be patient so that someone else can be stupid or dishonest. That's not my job. I didn't sign a contract for that. I wouldn't sign a contract requiring me to be patient so somebody else can be an idiot. So everything that I do and everything I don't do, everything I say and things I refuse to say are going to be based on this. That's all. I'm not saying I'm always be correct. I'm saying that my intentions are to be honest and to be fair. And that my mistakes are going to be honest mistakes. And I'm saying this to you and sharing this with you not only to clarify this, but also in the hopes that it may remind somebody else. Because while it's not going to make us all agree, it can cut down on unnecessary, not only arguments, but it can cut down on unnecessary hatred and beefs. Because as I've said, we do have a practical reason to unite. It's not an emotional, a symbolic reason at all. You could say it's religious because self-defense is supposed to be a part of religion as well, but it's not a symbolic or unrealistic reason. It is a very practical reason we have around which to unite, and that is self-defense. So I'm hoping that others can be reminded of these things so that we can facilitate us being able to cooperate with each other for the purposes of self-defense from common oppressors and enemies, mainly the most active one. So hopefully this will help, and I hope that one day this will not even be necessary. Thanks again for listening. The blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media, signing black out. Again, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual male power, specifically because our enemies don't like it. And as I said before, because the innocent women can also find benefit from it. Assalamu alaikum.